The snow fell thick and silent over the mountains, covering the dark forest like a white graveyard. Deep inside those woods lived a man named Elior, a lumberjack who worked alone. He had no family, no friends, and no one to speak to except the whisper of trees and the crackle of fire. His hands were rough from years of cutting wood, and his heart was heavier than his axe. Elior had lived like this for almost 10 winters. But this winter was different. His back ached, his arms tired faster, and the logs piled slower. The cold seemed crueler than ever. He needed help, someone or something to share the work. So when a traveling trader stopped by his cabin one afternoon, Elior didn't think twice. The trader was a small, sharp-eyed man with a crooked smile. He carried a wagon full of strange cages and covered crates. His breath smelled of metal and lies. "I've got workers," the trader said, rubbing his hands. "Cheap ones. Strong, silent, and loyal. You won't need to feed 'em much either." Elior frowned. "Humans?" The trader shook his head quickly. "Not quite. Goblins from the caves down south. Obedient little beasts. They know how to swing an axe and carry wood. One of them could make your winter easy." Elior hesitated. Goblins were known to be sneaky, wild, and dangerous. But he was desperate. The snowstorms were coming and his supplies were low. "How much?" Elior asked. The trader leaned closer and whispered a price so low it felt like a trap. But Elior didn't care. He nodded and handed over the coins. The trader grinned, pulling a chain from the wagon. At the end of it was a small figure wrapped in a torn cloak and hooded sack. The figure's head was completely covered, tied tightly with a rope around the neck. The body beneath the sack moved slightly, shaking, breathing, alive. Elior's chest tightened. Something about the movement didn't seem right. Too soft, too careful, too human. "Don't take off the sack," the trader warned, his grin fading for a moment. "They don't like the light. And once they see your face, they never forget it. Keep it on, always." Elior nodded slowly. He didn't understand the warning, but the man's tone made his skin crawl. After the trader left, Elior dragged the chained figure into his cabin. The firelight flickered across the small space, wooden walls, tools on hooks, and a single table. The figure stood silently in the middle of the room, head bowed. Elior sighed. "You understand me?" He asked, no reply. Only the faint sound of breathing under the sack. He pointed toward the corner. "You sleep there. Work starts tomorrow." Woodpile behind the cabin, still no reply. The figure just nodded once, slowly, nervously. The lumberjack sat down by the fire, uneasy. The trader's words echoed in his mind. "Don't take off the sack." That night the wind howled through the cracks of the cabin walls. Elior tried to sleep, but strange sounds filled the darkness. A low hum drifted through the air, soft and sad, like someone whispering to themselves. It wasn't goblin speech. It was too gentle, too full of pain. Elior turned in his bed. "Quiet," he muttered. But the humming stopped before he even spoke. The silence that followed was even worse. When morning came, he found the figure already outside. The woodpile was twice the size it had been last night. The axe lay clean and polished, sharper than he'd left it. The figure stood still, waiting. Elior frowned. "You did all this?" A small nod. "How?" he asked. "You can't even see." No answer. He stepped closer, noticing the figure's hands, small, delicate, trembling. The fingers were covered in dirt, but the nails were not like a goblin's. They were too smooth. Too human. Something deep inside Elior's gut twisted. He didn't know what he had brought into his home, but it wasn't what the trader claimed. That evening, while splitting logs, he caught a reflection in the cabin window. The figure stood behind him, motionless, watching. When he turned, it quickly looked down. He spoke again, softly this time. "You're not a goblin, are you?" The figure froze but didn't reply. Elior sighed and went back to his work, pretending not to notice the shaking. But his heart was pounding. Every instinct told him something wasn't right. As darkness fell again, the forest grew silent. Too silent. Even the wolves seemed afraid to howl. Elior added more wood to the fire, glancing at the figure sitting quietly in the corner. He couldn't see its face, only the outline of its breath rising through the sack. Then, just before midnight, a faint sound echoed outside, the creak of wagon wheels in the snow. Elior rushed to the window, but the forest was empty. No lights. No tracks. When he turned back, the figure was standing right behind him. He jumped back, startled. "What are you—" The figure slowly raised its hand and pointed toward the door. Elior's heart raced. "What's out there?" he asked, his voice low. But before he could move, a whisper came from beneath the sack, a whisper that didn't sound like a goblin at all. It was soft, human, and trembling. "They will come back," it said. Elior froze. He didn't know who they were, but as the fire crackled and the wind screamed through the trees, he realized one terrible truth. Whatever he had bought was hiding from something far worse. The next morning, the forest was quiet, heavy with fog. Elior stepped outside his cabin, his boots sinking into the cold snow. He half expected the strange figure to be gone, vanished into the mist. But there she was, still standing near the woodpile, still wearing that rough sack over her head. She didn't move until he spoke. "Start with the east trees today," Elior said, pointing with his axe. The figure nodded and picked up the spare axe from the stump. Her movements were steady, careful, too graceful for a goblin. When she swung, the blade hit perfectly in the center of the log every time. No waste, no struggle. Each strike echoed like a heartbeat in the cold air. Elior watched for a long while, pretending to sharpen his tools. He had worked with many laborers before, back when he was young and strong. None had this kind of rhythm, like she had learned woodcutting through patience, not instinct. By noon, she had already stacked 2 full rows of firewood. Elior could hardly believe it. "You work well," he said finally. No reply. Only a nod. When he handed her food, simple bread and dried meat, she hesitated. Then she took it with shaking hands, lifted the sack just enough to slip the bread underneath, and ate in silence. He frowned. Even her eating was quiet, controlled, like someone trained to hide sound. "Trader said you don't talk," Elior muttered. "That true?" The figure froze, then gave a slow nod again. He sighed. "Fine, quiet's good. But you keep watch when I sleep. If wolves come, wake me." That night the snow thickened. The cabin's windows glowed faintly from the firelight. Elior lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. The forest outside creaked and moaned as if alive. Somewhere in that noise he heard a soft tune again. The same sad humming from the night before. This time it was clearer. A lullaby. Not goblin. Not beast. It sounded human. Elior sat up slowly. The figure was sitting near the fire, sharpening the axe. Her head tilted slightly as she hummed, unaware that he was awake. "Where did you learn that song?" Elior whispered. The humming stopped. The axe froze mid-motion. He waited. But she didn't move or answer. Only the sound of the fire filled the room again. Elior sighed and lay back down, pretending to sleep. But his thoughts kept racing. Every small action, every breath she took, it all felt wrong, out of place. He remembered the trader's grin, the warning, "Don't take off the sack." But why? What was under that hood that needed hiding so badly? By morning, curiosity burned in his chest like fever. He went out early, pretending to fetch water from the frozen stream. When he returned, he paused at the door. Through a crack in the wood, he saw her kneeling near the fire. She was whispering something, soft, rhythmic, not any human language he knew. Then she raised her hand over the flames. The fire flickered blue. Elior's breath caught. Blue, not orange. Blue like lightning in a clear sky. He blinked and it was gone. The fire burned normal again, and she sat motionless as if nothing happened. He stepped inside slowly. "What did you just do?" She didn't answer. "You touched the fire," he said. It turned blue. Still silence. Elior's heart pounded. "Are you cursed?" Her hands trembled, then she dropped the axe and backed away. For the first time, Elior heard her voice, a whisper so soft it almost broke. "Please, don't tell them." Elior froze. "Tell who?" he asked carefully, but she shook her head fast, almost panicking. "They will come," she whispered again. "If they know I'm here, they will come." The room felt smaller suddenly. The wind outside grew louder, pushing against the walls. Elior stepped closer. "You mean the traitors?" She didn't reply. "You're not a goblin," he said quietly. "Are you?" The figure stood still. Then, slowly, she shook her head. Elior's breath misted in the air. His fingers tightened around his axe handle, not to strike, but from fear. Fear of the unknown thing standing in his cabin. "I don't want trouble," he said. "You do your work and I'll forget what I saw. Understand?" A faint nod. For the rest of the day, neither of them spoke. But the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, full of questions neither dared to ask. That night, as the storm hit, Elior woke again to strange sounds. Not humming this time. but a low metallic buzz like distant thunder trapped inside the walls. He turned toward the corner and saw a faint light glowing under the sack. A blue shimmer. The figure sat upright, breathing fast, whispering words that weren't meant for this world. Elior didn't move. He watched, heart pounding as the light faded and the whisper stopped. Then she turned her head slightly toward him, even though she couldn't see through the sack. And in that cold silence, Elior felt something he hadn't felt in years, fear mixed with pity. Whatever she wasn't just hiding. She was running from something out there, something that could find her even here, in the farthest corner of the world. Outside, the storm screamed against the roof. Inside, two souls sat awake, one in chains, one in doubt, both trapped in a night that was no longer human. For 3 more days, the cabin stood wrapped in snow and silence. Elior tried to pretend everything was normal, that the figure working beside him was just another servant. But every hour that lie grew thinner. The sack still covered her head, tied tightly around her neck. Sometimes when the wind blew hard and the fire flickered low, he caught glimpses beneath it. Pale skin, not green like goblins, but almost luminous. Once he thought he saw faint silver marks along her jaw, glowing like moonlight reflected on water. But when he blinked, the light was gone. Elior told himself not to think about it. The traitor's warning echoed in his mind. Never remove the sack. The way the man said it, his eyes darting like prey, still bothered him. Why so much fear for a simple cloth? He decided to test it. That morning as they worked, Elior pretended to trip, letting the axe handle brush against the sack. The figure flinched violently, dropping to her knees and covering her head. "Don't," she gasped softly, her voice trembling. "Please, don't touch it." Elior froze. That was the first full sentence she had ever spoken. Her voice wasn't raspy or rough, it was gentle, like the wind through pine trees. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Didn't mean to scare you," she nodded but didn't stand. For a long while she stayed still, clutching the sack as if her life depended on it. Elior's chest tightened. He wanted to ask questions, but something about her fear stopped him. Later that night, as snow whispered against the windows, he sat by the fire sharpening his axe. The soft sound of steel scraping stone filled the air. Behind him he heard her humming again, but this time it wasn't the same song. It was a melody he didn't recognize, slow, haunting, and strangely beautiful. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound of Earth at all. When she stopped, Elior asked quietly, "What does that song mean?" There was silence. Then she whispered, "Home." He turned, surprised. "Home? You mean the caves?" She shook her head slowly. "No farther." Her voice cracked slightly, and Elior saw her shoulders tremble. She was crying, but no tears fell. Only a soft shimmer glowed through the fabric near her eyes. He looked away, pretending not to notice. He didn't know why, but something inside him said showing pity would break her even more. For a while, they both sat in silence, only the sound of the fire breathing between them. Then Elior spoke. "The man who sold you. He lied, didn't he?" Her hands tightened on her knees. "He said you were a goblin," he continued. "But I've seen goblins. You're not one." Still no answer. "Why did he warn me about the sack?" he asked. "What happens if I take it off?" She raised her head slowly. The air in the room seemed to shift, heavy, cold, and sharp. "Because if you do," she said softly, "they will find me." Elior frowned. "Who?" She whispered a word he didn't understand, something like Veronai. It rolled off her tongue like a sigh of pain. "They hunt the marked," she continued. "Those who escape the fall." Elior blinked. "The fall?" But she didn't explain. She just turned toward the window as if listening to something far away. The firelight flickered across her back, and for a moment, Elior thought he saw faint lines of light moving under her skin, like constellations shifting beneath the surface. He stood slowly, unease crawling up his spine. "You're not from this world. Are you?" She didn't answer, but that silence was an answer in itself. That night, Elior couldn't sleep. Every sound outside, the crack of branches, the whisper of snow, the sigh of the wind, felt different, like the forest was watching him. Just before dawn, a low hum filled the air, deep enough to shake the window glass. Elior bolted upright. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It was something mechanical, distant but powerful, echoing through the sky. The figure stood by the window, motionless, head tilted upward. "What is that?" he whispered. Her voice was calm now, but sad. "They're searching." Ilior's blood ran cold. "For you?" She nodded once. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "If they find you, what happens?" Her head turned toward him, and though he couldn't see her eyes, he felt them pierce through the sack straight into his soul. "They burn everything," she said simply. The humming grew louder, then faded again into the night sky. Silence returned, but it wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the kind of silence that came before disaster. Ilior looked at her, at the strange being he'd dragged into his home thinking she was a tool, a slave, a servant. Now she was something else entirely, something far beyond his understanding. He thought of taking off the sack right then, ending the mystery once and for all. But as his hand reached out, her whisper stopped him. "If you remove it," she said softly, "you will see the truth, but you won't survive it." Ilior's hand froze midair. The fire flickered. The forest howled. And for the first time, Ilior realized he wasn't just keeping a secret. He was sheltering a signal that the stars were still listening. The storm lasted 3 days. Snow buried the cabin's roof. The forest disappeared behind walls of white. For Ilior, time itself seemed to stop. He spent those days in silence, chopping wood, keeping the fire alive, pretending that everything was normal. But the air inside the cabin was different now, heavier, tense, filled with unspoken truths. The figure worked quietly as always. Every movement was graceful, careful, but Ilior could see the exhaustion in her posture. Sometimes she would stop mid-swing and turn toward the woods, as if she heard something he couldn't. Her head would tilt slightly, like she was listening to distant voices that only she could understand. On the third night, while the storm roared outside, Ilior finally spoke. "You can't stay like this forever," he said. "You're cold. You can barely eat. That sack, it's not right." The figure froze near the fire, her hands clutching the rough cloth around her head. "It's safer this way," she whispered. "For who?" he asked. "You or me." Silence. Ilior stood, stepping closer. "If they come looking, they'll come for both of us now." "I deserve to know what I'm hiding in my own home." She turned slightly, trembling. "If you see me," she said softly, "you will never see the same world again." He frowned. "I already don't." For a long moment neither spoke. Only the sound of the storm filled the space, the wind clawing at the door, the snow hissing against the window. Then Ilior reached out, slowly, carefully, and placed his hand on the rope that tied the sack. She didn't move. She just stood there, breathing fast, her body shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Please," she whispered. "Don't." But Ilior had already decided. With one pull, the rope loosened. The sack slid off, the firelight caught her face, and for the first time, Ilior saw her. She wasn't a goblin. Not even close. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly in the dark as if the stars themselves lived under her flesh. Thin, luminous lines ran across her cheeks and temples, pulsing softly with every heartbeat. Her eyes were the most shocking, deep, endless, reflecting not firelight but galaxies. Tiny constellations shimmered in her pupils, moving slowly like drifting stars. Ilior stumbled back, unable to breathe. What are you?" She turned her face away, hiding. "Something that doesn't belong here." He stared, speechless. Every part of her was both beautiful and wrong, like a dream built out of the night sky. "You're not from this world," he said, barely above a whisper. "No," she replied. "I came from far beyond your mountains. Beyond your sky." Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke. "Our ship fell from orbit weeks ago. The others, they didn't survive. Scavengers found me. They thought I was a creature, not a person. They sold me like an animal." Ilior's heart pounded. He remembered the trader's words, the cheap price, the warning about the sack. He felt sick. "They sold you," he muttered, "as a slave." She nodded faintly. "To hide what I am. If they knew the truth, they would have killed me. My kind carries something they want. Our blood. It can power machines, heal wounds, even make metal sing, but once they take it, we die." Ilior stepped closer, shaking his head slowly. "You're saying your blood is fuel?" "Not fuel," she said quietly. "Life. Energy. What you call magic, we call light." She looked up at him then, eyes shimmering with tears that glowed softly as they fell. "I didn't want to be found again. I thought the sack would make me invisible." For the first time, Ilior saw not a creature, but someone terrified, exhausted, and completely alone. He lowered his voice. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she whispered. "It means echo of the stars." Elior exhaled slowly. "Sarah." The name felt strange, yet right on his tongue. She flinched as thunder cracked outside. Instinctively, he stepped closer, placing his coat over her shoulders. She looked at him confused. "You'll freeze," she said. "So will you," he replied simply. For a moment they just stood there, the firelight flickering between them. Two beings from different worlds bound by nothing but a fragile sense of safety. Then from outside came a sound that shattered the calm. 3 heavy knocks on the cabin door. Elior's blood ran cold. No one ever came this deep into the forest, especially during a storm. Sarah's skin flickered faintly with light like a warning signal. Her voice trembled. "They found me." Elior grabbed his axe and looked at the door. "Who?" She backed away, her eyes glowing brighter. "The men who sold me. They work for the hunters. They tracked the light. They must have seen it." The knocking came again, louder, angrier. Elior's mind raced. He could lie. Pretend she wasn't there. Hand her over. It would be the safe choice. The human choice. But as he looked back at her, this frightened, alien girl who had done nothing but work and survive, he realized something inside him had already changed. He stepped between her and the door, his voice steady. "Get under the floor, now." Sarah hesitated, eyes wide. "Go," he repeated firmly. "I'll handle them." As she slipped beneath the wooden boards, the last thing Elior saw was the faint blue glow fading into darkness. Then he turned toward the door, gripping his axe tighter. The knock stopped. Silence. Then a voice, cold, human and smiling through the storm. "Evening, lumberjack. We're looking for something, small and very valuable." Elior's jaw tightened. "You're too late," he said. "Nothing valuable here but wood." The door creaked as the handle turned. Elior raised his axe. The storm screamed louder, and for the first time in years, the lonely lumberjack had something worth fighting for. The storm outside had softened, but the danger had not. Elior stood before the door, axe raised, his breath sharp in the cold air. The silence that followed the last knock was heavier than thunder. Every heartbeat sounded too loud. Then a voice came again, low, calm, but carrying the weight of a threat. "Open the door, old man. We know what's inside." The girl with the light. Elior's blood ran cold. He didn't move. "You've got the wrong cabin." The voice chuckled darkly. "Funny thing about lies, lumberjack. They glow in the dark." A sharp beam of light sliced through the small cabin window. Cold, white, mechanical. It scanned across the room, over the table, the walls, the fire, then stopped, hovering near the floorboards. Elior acted fast. He kicked the table onto its side, blocking the window, and whispered toward the hidden boards beneath his feet. "Stay silent," he muttered. "Don't move." Underneath, Sarah pressed her hand to her chest, her breath trembling. Her skin shimmered faintly, barely visible through the cracks. She whispered something in her own language, a prayer made of starlight and fear. Outside, heavy boots crunched over snow. There were 3 of them, men or something close enough. Their voices were rough, but their movements too precise. The door handle twisted again, slow and deliberate. Elior's grip tightened on the axe. "Back off," he shouted. "You've got no business here." A laugh answered him. Then a fist slammed the door open. Snow rushed in, swirling around 3 figures. They wore black coats lined with metal armor, their faces hidden by masks that glowed faintly with blue patterns, almost like Sarah's markings, but crueler, artificial. The tallest one stepped forward, holding a strange device that hummed softly in his hand. "Where is she?" he asked flatly. Elior stared back. "Who?" The man smirked. "Don't play dumb. We tracked her here. Signal's strong. She's close." Elior said nothing. The man looked around, scanning the cabin. His eyes landed on the floor. "Under there," he said quietly. Before he could move, Elior swung. The axe cut through the air and smashed into the device, shattering it. Sparks flew, filling the room with a burst of light. The man stumbled back, cursing. "Get him!" one of the others yelled. Elior swung again, blocking the doorway, forcing them back. For a moment, it felt like chopping wood. Only this time, the wood screamed and bled. But he was only one man, and they had weapons he didn't understand. One raised a rod that glowed red. Elior ducked just as a beam of heat scorched the wall behind him. The cabin filled with smoke and snow. Then from beneath the floor came a faint hum. Blue light spilled out from the cracks, brighter, wilder. The men froze. "She's activating," one whispered. "Contain her before—" Too late. The boards burst upward, sending wood flying. Sarah rose from the floor, her eyes blazing with light. The soft, frightened glow Elior had seen before was gone. This was a storm of energy. Her markings shone like rivers of lightning beneath her skin. "Stay down," Elior shouted, but the men were already raising their weapons. Sarah lifted her hand. A wave of blue force rippled through the cabin, flinging the men backward into the snow outside. Their armor sparked and cracked. Elior shielded his eyes, stunned. The air vibrated with a sound like 1,000 voices whispering at once. The fire went out. The room pulsed with living light. Then it was gone. The glow faded, leaving only the soft crackle of dying embers. Sarah collapsed to her knees, gasping. The marks on her skin dimmed back to silver. Elior ran to her, catching her before she hit the floor. "Easy," he said. "You're bleeding." She looked up at him weakly. "No, not blood, energy." Outside, one of the men groaned, dragging himself through the snow. His mask was cracked, revealing part of his face. Human, scarred, eyes filled with fear and greed. Elior stared. "They're human?" Sarah nodded faintly. "Hunters. From your kind. They trade what they find across the stars. They want what my people carry." Elior's throat tightened. "You mean your light? Yes, it heals. It powers, it destroys. To them, it's all the same." He helped her sit near the fire, though it barely burned anymore. "Why didn't you fight before?" he asked softly. She looked at her trembling hands. "Every time I use it, I lose a part of myself. My light doesn't return easily. When it's gone, so am I." Elior stared into the ashes, his jaw set. "Then you can't use it again." She smiled weakly. "If I don't, they'll take it anyway." The wind outside began to howl again. Distant voices shouted through the storm, the hunters regrouping. Elior rose and picked up his axe once more. "Then they'll have to go through me." Sarah looked up, eyes wide. "You'll die for me." He shrugged. "Maybe. But I've been living alone long enough to know there's worse things than dying." For the first time, Sarah smiled. A small, trembling thing, but real. "Humans," she whispered. "You burn brighter than you know." Elior turned toward the door, snow blowing in through the cracks, his axe gleaming faintly in the cold light. Outside, the shadows of the hunters moved closer again. He stood tall, heart steady. He was no hero, just a man with nothing left to lose and someone finally worth protecting. Behind him, Sarah pressed her glowing hand to the wall. Symbols shimmered softly, ancient, starborn, alive. The cabin pulsed once with blue light, sealing itself like a heartbeat. The hunters would come. But this time the lonely lumberjack was not alone. The night went quiet again, too quiet. Elior could hear the faint hiss of snow melting on the cabin roof, the crack of wood inside the fire, and under it all, something else. A rhythm of metal boots crunching in perfect unison. They were coming back. Sarah stirred weakly near the fire, her glow dim but alive. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They never stop until they have what they came for." Elior looked out the window. 3 shapes moved through the storm, their armor gleaming faintly blue under flashes of lightning. Behind them hovered a machine, an angular craft with spinning lights that cut through the snow like knives. He'd never seen anything like it. Not even in his worst dreams. "What do they want now?" he asked. She looked up, her voice trembling. "My core still shines. They can sense it. They'll burn this place to ashes to take it." Elior grabbed his axe and his old hunting rifle from the wall. He had 5 bullets left, 5 chances against gods and metal skins. Not much, but it was enough for him. "Stay here," he said firmly. Sarah tried to rise, but her body failed her. "You can't fight them, Elior. They're trained to kill even stars." He gave a small smile. "Then they haven't met a lumberjack in winter." The first hunter stepped into view, scanning the cabin with a glowing visor. His voice echoed through a speaker. "Target confirmed. Signal strong. Authorization to engage granted." Elior raised his rifle and fired. The shot cracked through the storm. The bullet hit metal and ricocheted, but it staggered the man long enough for Elior to throw the axe. It spun through the air and buried itself in the hunter's arm. Sparks burst out as wires snapped. The others opened fire, bright red bolts cutting through the snow, burning holes through trees. Elior dove behind a log, heart pounding. The smell of burning pine filled the air. Inside the cabin, Sarah closed her eyes. Her body trembled as soft blue light began to crawl along her veins again. She whispered in her alien tongue. The same prayer he'd heard before, but this time it sounded stronger. Outside, the sky answered. Lightning cracked, not natural lightning, but streaks of blue energy that bent toward the cabin like living creatures. The hunter stopped firing, staring upward in confusion. Elior saw his chance. He charged. Swinging his axe, he caught one of them by surprise, slamming the edge into the man's chest plate. The armor cracked open, revealing human skin underneath. "You're just men," Elior growled, pretending to be machines. The hunter snarled and grabbed Elior by the throat, lifting him with terrifying strength. "And you're just an animal standing in the way of profit." Elior struggled for air. Behind the man, the ground began to glow faint blue. He saw Sarah through the window, hands raised, eyes blazing. "Let him go." The hunter turned, just in time to see the ground erupt beneath his feet. Blue energy flared upward, swallowing him in light. When it faded, only dust and a smoking helmet remained. Elior fell to his knees, coughing, staring at her through the shattered window. "What are you doing?" he shouted. She shook her head. "Saving you." Another blast hit the cabin wall, tearing through wood. The last hunter advanced, firing again and again. Sarah stumbled, the glow around her fading. Elior pushed himself up and threw the rifle. It hit the hunter's faceplate, buying him 1 second. Enough. He grabbed his axe and charged through the smoke. The world slowed, the wind howled, snow swirled, the hunter's gun flared, then Elior's swing connected. The axe bit through the weapon, then the armor, then silence. The hunter fell. Elior stood panting, the storm howling around him. His hands were numb, his coat torn, but he was still standing. Behind him, the cabin door creaked open. Sarah stepped out, weak but glowing faintly again. She looked at the fallen hunters, then at him. "You fought for me," she whispered. "Why?" Elior wiped the blood from his face. "Because I'm human," he said simply. "And that's what we do when someone's hunted." Sarah's eyes shimmered, not with light but with emotion. "Your kind. It's rare in the stars. You fight for the hopeless," he shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of losing people." She stepped closer and placed her glowing hand on his chest. "Then you'll never be alone again." A faint hum filled the air. The crashed hunter's ship began to tremble, its lights flickering. The snow around them lifted as if drawn upward. "What's happening?" Elior asked. Sarah's voice grew calm again. "They called their beacon before dying. More will come. This planet won't be safe for me or for you." Elior looked toward the dark horizon. "Then we move before dawn," she nodded. "There's a cave near the ridge, a signal field. It can hide me, but I can't reach it alone." Elior grinned faintly. "You've got a lumberjack now." For the first time, Sarah laughed, soft, like wind through the stars. They stood together under the storm's dying breath. Around them, the forest was scorched and silent. 3 bodies lay buried in the snow, their blue lights fading into black. Above them, far beyond the clouds, faint streaks of red light appeared, ships descending through the atmosphere. Elior tightened his grip on the axe. "Looks like we're not done yet." Sarah looked up, eyes glowing brighter than the stars. "No," she said softly, "this is only the beginning." And together, the last lumberjack of Earth and the lost daughter of the stars walked into the storm, toward the ridge, toward survival, and toward a legend that the universe would one day remember as the night a human defied the hunters of light. The sky glowed red before dawn. Elior and Sarah stood on the ridge, breathless, snow swirling around their feet. Behind them, the forest burned softly under the fading storm, smoke curling upward into the gray sky like ghosts of fallen trees. Ahead, the mountains waited, tall, sharp, and silent. Somewhere within them was the cave Sarah had spoken of, the only place that could hide her light. But reaching it meant crossing open ground, exposed to the sky where the hunters' ships now prowled like vultures. Sarah looked up, her glowing eyes narrowing. "They've sent more," she whispered. 2 ships. Scanners active." Elior tightened the straps of his pack. "Then we keep moving." "You don't have to come," she said softly. "If they find me, they'll kill you too." He gave her a half smile. "They already tried." They moved together through the snow, silent except for the crunch beneath their boots. Every few minutes, Sarah would pause, close her eyes, and whisper strange words that made the air shimmer, hiding their heat signatures, masking their trail. But with each use, her glow dimmed. "You're fading," Elior said. She nodded weakly. "I can't hold the cloak much longer. My light, it's burning out." He stopped walking and looked at her. "Then save it. I'll get you there." Sarah shook her head. "You don't understand. Without the light, I die." Elior's jaw tightened. "Then we run." They reached the frozen lake by midday. The wind tore across the open ice like knives. Elior could see the cave now, a black scar in the mountain's side. But just as they started across, a shadow passed over them. A ship descended, silent, enormous, its engines humming like thunder. A bright red beam swept across the lake, locking onto them instantly. "Run!" Elior shouted. They sprinted across the ice. The beam followed, burning through snow, cracking the surface beneath their feet. Sarah stumbled, her knees hitting the ice. Elior grabbed her hand and pulled her up, his breath freezing in the air. A voice boomed from the sky, cold and mechanical. "Surrender the target. The human may live." Elior looked up and shouted back, "Come take her yourself." The ship responded with fire. A pulse cannon hit the lake, sending a wave of heat and ice shards exploding around them. The world turned white with noise. When the smoke cleared, Elior was on his knees, bleeding from his shoulder. The axe was gone. The cave was still 100 meters away. Sarah crawled beside him, trembling, her light barely visible now, just a soft glow in the snow. "They'll kill you," she said. "They'll burn this planet for me. I can't let that happen." He turned toward her, his breath ragged. "You think I care about the planet right now? You're what matters." Her eyes filled with tears, tears that glowed faintly blue. "Why would a human risk everything for someone like me?" Elior smiled through the blood. "Because that's what we are. We fight for those who can't, even when it hurts, even when it's hopeless." Sarah looked at him, and something in her heart shifted. For the first time since her crash, she didn't feel like prey. She felt seen. She reached out and touched his face. "Then let me return the favor." Before he could answer, she stood, light flaring around her body. The glow grew stronger, spreading from her skin into the air like ripples on water. "Sarah, what are you doing?" he shouted. She looked back, smiling softly. "Ending the hunt." The sky split open. Her light rose like a storm, brighter than lightning, more alive than the sun. The ship above froze mid-air, engines failing, hull screaming as blue fire wrapped around it. The scanners melted. The metal cracked. One by one, its lights went out. The ship crashed into the distant mountains with a sound that shook the heavens. When the light faded, Sarah was gone. Only a faint shimmer remained in the air, falling like snow made of stars. Elior stumbled forward, calling her name. "Sarah, where are you?" No answer, only the wind. He fell to his knees, staring at the glowing dust scattered across the ice. His hands trembled as he gathered a handful of it, soft, warm, alive. And then he heard it. A voice, faint but clear, echoing in his mind. "I'm not gone, Elior. My light lives within you now. As long as you remember me, they'll never win." He looked toward the horizon, where the red ships burned against the morning sky. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. He stood slowly, the faint blue glow now pulsing faintly beneath his skin. Her light, his strength. The hunters would come again. The world would change, but so would he, because that day, deep in the frozen silence, a simple human lumberjack made a choice, not to bow, not to surrender, but to fight for something greater than himself. And across the stars, where lost worlds whispered his name, that choice became a story, a legend told in 100 worlds about the man who sheltered a fallen star and taught the universe what it meant to be human.